Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Friday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for popping by today. Shout out Bello and Ballin Brownie already in the chat saying hello. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to everyone watching live here, twitch.tv/primetimepk, or if you're listening in podcast form later, or on YouTube, youtube.com/@couchpotatodiary, which is the most fucking annoying thing ever. But coming up on the show today, it is a Fights in Football Friday, so we're going to be running through every game in the NFL, plus all the CFL action, fights to make coming off of the big boxing that we had, and I haven't talked wrestling in a while, which was very unlike me, so we're getting into some WWE and some AEW. I do have some catching up to do on NHL preview stuff, so we're going to start the show with that, and then get into the fights and football stuff. So, thank you guys so much for popping in. As always, all your thoughts and questions and comments in the chat, very welcome. I mean, until they're not, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's get into it, and do a little bit more on the hockey preview before we get into the football. So my cat has been sound asleep beside me the entire morning, and now that I have started talking, she just has to come in and get her camera time. So she'll blend in with my black sweater. Don't worry about it. You'll barely notice her. I will, because she will bite my beard, but we'll be fine. Anyway, so, oh yeah, no, there we go. Leaving already. And stepping on the keyboard. That's going to be helpful. Okay, so this NHL season, and, you know, anytime with this job, really, with previews and stuff like that, it doesn't help to come on and say, I don't know. That was one thing I was told very early on in my career, is like, you know, you say I don't know a lot. Just, like, don't do that. And I still think I say I don't know a fair amount, but I do try to, you know, you want to come down one side or the other, and so let's lock in. These are the things that I think. But I still have enough humility and grace, really, that I am aware that I could be wrong on some shit. And so today, I hope you're not adjusting the volume while you're doing that. So today, we are going, what a shit show to start, going to be starting with a look at the things that I am worried I am wrong about in the National Hockey League this season. So, number 5. Hey, Bailey Bello says below. Number 5. The impact of the better situation out in Utah. I have been saying on here for a little bit that I think the Utah Yeti HC Jazz team will have a really good opportunity to make the postseason this year. I thought that they had a very good team that was ready to take a step last year, and then, you know, where are you going to live? Why does this arena suck so bad? Hey, what are your thoughts on Salt Lake City? Have you ever thought of Salt Lake City before in your life? All of these different things start to come up. It causes a bit of a distraction. They lose like 13 games in a row, and everything goes to hell very, very quickly. They're not going to have that this year. I'm going to assume they're not moving out of Utah year one. That would be quite the thing. And if it is, I mean, whatever. That is going to be a very tricky team to figure out. But I do think that this is a team that has quite a bit of talent. They go out and acquire Sergachev. There's always already a lot of young pieces there that you feel very excited about. And so I think that Utah is going to take a step this year. But I am worried that I am just kind of whistling past the graveyard when it comes to some of the struggles and just assuming none of them were hockey related and all of them were life distraction oriented. So I am worried that I'm just going to be wrong about that. Where is Salt in Lake City? I'm sure they have salt everywhere in Salt Lake City. I've never been. It seems like a lovely place, though. They had an Olympics. Number 4, maybe the Rangers just aren't as good as I think they are. I'm not unique in the thought that the New York Rangers are going to be a very good hockey team this year, but I do think that this is a group that is ready for a run towards the Stanley Cup. And I'm a little bit worried, though, as time goes on, and it just doesn't really click ever. And they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So this isn't a bum of a hockey team or anything like that, but they also didn't they also didn't play great in the playoffs, right? Like they got, whether it was a timely goal at a right time, like they were kind of outplayed soundly throughout many parts of games against like Carolina and stuff like that. And they just happened to keep winning those games. And so that has kind of stuck with me in the back of my mind, is that maybe this team's window is closing a little bit more rapidly than I think it is. And so that kind of concerns me a little bit. And number 3, the development of the kids in Montreal. I have said that like my breakout players list had 2 players on the Habs on it, with Cole Caulfield breaking out from already being a brokeout. I think that he moves into superstar status this year. And Uri Slavkovsky, I think, takes a big jump in Montreal this season. Those are the kids, Bello, that I am talking about. Those are the guys that I think have an opportunity. And like another year of Nick Suzuki, I think on the blue line, they have a couple of guys, Gooley and such, that have an opportunity to progress a little bit. But there is also, again, the thought of, everyone has thought, like Buffalo has been waiting for that breakout for like 4 years. Ditto in Ottawa. And Detroit to a certain extent, although they were actually in the playoff race until the last day of the regular season this last year. So I am thinking that Montreal's talent is good enough that they can kind of jump the line a little bit. But if that talent doesn't take the big jump in the way that I think it does, and probably specifically in net, then this team isn't going to have the big advances that I think they're going to have. And me having Montreal in basically every list that I have done previewing the season this year, that will have been an entire waste of time. At 2, Markstrom being the missing piece in New Jersey. We have all talked about it. You see the hat, based out here in Calgary, talked about the Markstrom trade ad nauseum. By the way, if you want a full breakdown of that, if you just want a nice refresher, Game Over Calgary, I have a video up on the Game Over Calgary YouTube channel. So just go check that one out and check out the preseason reaction there from me. But quick recap, last year, trade deadline, I said that New Jersey had a chance to win the Stanley Cup if they made a move to go out and get Tanev and Markstrom from the Flames. They decided to get none of them, instead getting Jake Allen, which did not lead to even playoffs, let alone a run toward the Stanley Cup. But now they make the big acquisition in the offseason for Shea. They go out and get Jacob Markstrom, who, to Deeds' point, also, hello Deeds, Markstrom, fantastic mask. Elite mask game. We don't have enough good masks. I think we need to talk about that a little bit more. I shouldn't say that. We have some good masks. We don't have a lot that stand out. We don't have a lot of unique. I feel like we need to focus on these a little bit more. Anyway, I'm rambling. I feel like Markstrom's the missing piece in New Jersey. I feel like this is a guy who, when he is at his best, is the type of goaltender that this team needs to get them to the promised land. Like, I genuinely think New Jersey is in that circle of teams that can win the Stanley Cup this year. And so, there are a few ways I can be wrong in that. That's really hard to do, just in general. Being a team that can win the Stanley Cup, there are but a few of them. And so, like, there's a lot of gap between where they were and where I think they can be, and a lot can go wrong in this spot here. We are coming off of a season where Jacob Markstrom was very good. That was coming off of a season where Jacob Markstrom was really bad. And goalies tend to not, at his age, tend to not just, bad season, rock it up again, here we go. That tends to not be the case. So there is absolutely a world where Markstrom isn't as good as I think he is. This team isn't as good as they think they are. Already, Hughes dealing with an injury out there. Also, the East, quite good. And that division, at least at the top, quite good. And so there are a few ways where that one kind of goes wrong. And I'm a little bit concerned about that. And the number one thing I am worried about in the NHL previews this year, Steven Stamkos' impact on leaving the Tampa Bay Lightning. I have come on here a number of times and said, also, when I pop in at 960 when they let me, I have said that people are kind of sleeping on the impact Steven Stamkos had on Tampa Bay. And I know for a bit being like, Steven Stamkos, kind of underrated. No one's talking about how good this guy is. That seems a little extreme. But I do think that there comes a point where, okay, he's old, he's heading toward free agency, it's just going to be a whatever, he's actually not that good, he's just a veteran guy, and we just remember the good old days. You tend to, once a guy hits a certain age, and quite frankly, a point in their contract, you start to be like, okay, yeah, whatever. And he's also had the injury issues, right? So I think people just kind of write off what Stamkos can do. but 2 40-goal seasons in the last 3 years is nothing to scoff at. And I still think he's a better hockey player than Jake Gensel is. And so while maybe this does set them up long-term a little bit better out in Tampa Bay, I think that this year there's going to be a bit of an adjustment and there's going to be a bit of a step back. And I also think that there was an emotional component to this out in Tampa Bay. And like CJ brought up on his show with Julian, I think it was a week ago, I'm behind, but talking about how Vasilevsky was like, yeah, tell Stam, I've already told Stamkos, like, just be kind on the one goal you get on me this year, because he's definitely going to get one, and all this stuff. Like they're waxing poetic about him, and I worry that all of that is going to kind of damage things out in Tampa a little bit. I'm also worried that I've maybe gone a little bit too hard on the Jake Gensel isn't Steven Stamkos thing. I don't want it to seem like I think Jake Gensel is dog shit, and he is just the, Ensign Carter out there with the Sedin twins. And not that Ensign Carter was dog shit, but you know what I mean. That he's just this overrated whatever who just happened to have good line mates. That's not the case. Gensel is quite good at the sport of hockey. And thusly, I think he is going to have probably some pretty good years, pretty good games this year with Tampa Bay, and probably put up some pretty big point totals. But I do think that there is a step back coming for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Okay, so that is the hockey part. So we have now got the non-fights and football stuff out of the way on a Fights and Football Friday. Let's get to the football. It's time for your NFL preview going into the week in the National Football League. I missed this in the last part, so apologies, deeds. Wolf needs to get the Trevor Kidd treatment and have a wolf instead of a dragon on his mask. The backplate could be a moon. Yeah, how do you not, right? Like, and even like with the Flames, you could have a fiery moon, but like a subtly fiery moon, not the moon is on fire, but just like a subtle fire in there and all of that. There's definitely something there. And Deed's also saying Sabres and Devils in the playoffs, Lightning and Islanders are out. I would agree. The Sabres one, I can't get there just yet with the Sabres. We'll get into the full team previews in a little bit, next week probably. I think they need a little bit more offense, and the goaltending needs to not scare me as much. But they definitely could. Like, there is a number of different universes where that team makes the playoffs this year. Okay. Now the football, as we get into week 4 in the National Football League. Coming off of last week, I had this written down. We talked about it. Week 2, or what was my week 1, didn't go great in the old prediction game. This week was better. We still didn't quite get to 500, but we were at 9-11 for the week in the NFL. The picks that we clicked on, 5-5. Also, I did say on here, and doing this again, the today's ticket portion, where I officially give out all the picks that I'm actually going to be clicking on. That was a podcast exclusive last week, and we went 11-6 on that, and that was NFL, CFL, boxing, and some UFC. So that went pretty well, and going to be incorporating kick into that a little bit more. There's just, there's some, not that it's overly intrusive or anything, but here on Twitch there are some, like, hey, just make sure you specify if we're going to be talking about gambling. And we're not talking about gambling the whole time, so I don't want to put that thing on. It's a whole big thing. Probably didn't need to explain it, but Vyvanse and coffee is quite a combination. So let's get into the NFL preview, shall we? We begin with a scintillating matchup out in Carolina as the Panthers take on the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals favored by 4.5. The total in this game is at 47.5. Cincinnati, one of the most concerning teams in the NFL so far this season. Statistically, some of the stuff looks pretty good, right? They're 12th in DVOA, which again is an efficiency statistic. 5th on offense, 24th in defense. I think that probably tells the story for you. A lot of the other underlying numbers on this defense actually aren't bad. They're 6th in defensive success rate, EPA per dropback success rate, and rush success rate. So a few of these things they are actually able to hold up. It's just a few other big ones not necessarily working out. For example, 30th in defensive EPA per play. So that is telling me that for the most part, you have a team that is kind of keeping it in front of them, not allowing teams to get past the 6, and like the 6th in success rate and 30th in defensive EPA means that for the most part, like on a play-to-play basis, the defense is doing all right. It's just those big Jaden Daniels just beat you over the top plays that are killing them right now. And that was the thing last week. I was surprised at how much of the conversation around Cincinnati focused on, oh, well, Joe Burrow is just not a winning quarterback. It's like, dude, did they punt on Monday? If they did, it wasn't a lot. They were doing very well offensively. Defense just couldn't get a stop against a kid who hadn't really proven to be unstoppable just yet. And so I think the defense is the bigger part of the problem right now out in Cincinnati. I think the offense is fine. They're 4th in EPA per play, 4th in success rate. They're actually 2nd in rush success rate. There's been a lot of talk about, oh, well, they're just missing Joe Mixon. It's like Zach Moss and Chase Brown have been fine. There's nothing off about this offense. I know we want to, and even I have fallen into that, right? On Monday, talking about, oh, well, it's Joe Burrow and all the distractions and stuff like that. It's like, well, they scored 30. Like, they put up some points. And I get, against Washington, you should. And they did struggle against New England, and they looked all right against Kansas City. I am not saying everything is perfect in Cincinnati. Do not hear what I'm not saying. But I think the offense is actually moving things relatively well. They face a Carolina Panthers team that sucks. And yes, they beat the Raiders last week, but the Raiders, say it with me, suck. This is still a bad football team. 29th in DVOA, 30th in offense. The defense bumps up to 21st. The Gardner Minshew effect, so to speak. I still think this is a very bad team. And yes, Andy Dalton and Red Rocketing all over this game. Fantastic. Love it. Great. There is no way that A, Cincinnati allows themselves to go to 0-4, and B, that they have fallen to this point. And so I do think that we are getting a bit of a gift number at Cincinnati -4.5, and I think that if Jaden Daniels doesn't get a miraculous hero ball at the end of Monday Night Football, we're probably looking at Cincinnati even like plus or minus like 6.5, 7. So to get them at -4.5, I think you are fine. From a fantasy football standpoint, Joe Burrow's a start this week, right? And honestly, wherever you drafted Joe Burrow, you probably have to play him anyway. I would trust Zach Moss. I think you can trust Zach Moss more specifically. And I think that is a play you can feel comfortable with. Carolina's run defense is 24th in defensive EPA per rush, so they haven't been very good at stopping it. I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be able to run on them a little bit, and so I think that's a play. Mike Gesicki is still a play if you're desperate at tight end, which everyone is right now, so I have no problem with that. On the Carolina side, no Deontay Johnson kind of stings a little bit. I think Chuba Hubbard, that there is... Like, Cincinnati hasn't given up a ton on the ground so far this year, but they, again, like we talked about, they've given up some big plays, and all of that through the air. I don't think there is an option there. Like, maybe deeper league, if you want to take a look at a Xavier Legette, just based off of the injuries that they have, then maybe you can roll with that, but that might be a bit of a wait-and-see one. But if you're desperate and you're feeling some type of way, that ain't a bad play to throw that one in there. But I think Chuba Hubbard is a fine play, but there might be better options out there. Denver taking on the New York Jets. Jets favored by 7.5 in this game. The total is at 39.5. Denver is 19th in DVOA, 28th on offense, 13th on defense. All of their stats, basically, on the offensive side are in the 25th to 27th range in the NFL. And all of their stats defensively are basically 8th. But they have had a bit of trouble stopping the run when they need to. 23rd in the NFL in defensive rush success rate. For the Jets, 10th in DVOA, offense and defense both right around there. They have a number of categories on both sides in the top 10 offensively. We have started to see people get very excited about the Jets now, coming off of a good Thursday night performance against what is a pretty good New England Patriots defense. I do think that you can start to buy in on the Jets. We talked about this on Power Rankings Day when I had them in the top 5 begrudgingly. They are just... It is clicking now. Having another weapon on offense like a Braylon Allen really does make this thing a little bit interesting. And having another weapon that Aaron Rodgers trusts in Alan Lazard, I think is interesting. And I think that's going to be very important in this game. I think that there is going to be a real focus on shutting down Garrett Wilson. And we saw that last week. The Patriots really dialed in on that guy is not going to beat us. And look how that turned out. But last week we saw Patrick Surtain III cover Mike Evans almost exclusively, and they were able to do a really good job of completely taking him out of the game plan. And we saw New England again do the same thing to Wilson, and that allowed Aaron Rodgers to go to, or not, I guess allowed, I don't think he was champing at the bit to do that, but that guided Aaron Rodgers in the direction of a Allen Lazard, who ends up having a relatively decent game. And so I think, again, if you're in a deeper league where Allen Lazard is owned, I think you can roll with that. If you are in a league where you have Garrett Wilson, I don't think you sit him or anything like that, because like he's very good. But I would at least give a little bit of a thought to that. Anyway, just that's the one part of this matchup that I think kind of intrigues me a little bit. And so I meant to look at this before. Taking a look at some of the player props, player receiving yards. Allen Lazard is at 32.5. I don't think we're going to play that. Garrett Wilson, they've brought it down. 54.5 is a really good number for that. I don't think I don't think there's a value in that. It's already baked in what happened there. Honestly, there might be a little bit of value in the over. Like, are they really going to hold Garrett Wilson that down? I don't know. So there might be a little bit of value in that one. I just think the Jets plus a touchdown and a bit on Denver is a little aggressive right now. I still, I get the Jets just blew out New England. Thursday night, we have to caution against overreacting a little bit too much. So this is not going to be one I click on, but I'll take Denver plus 7.5. I think that Denver actually keeps this one kind of close, and the Jets will win, but I don't think you can go beyond that. Jacksonville taking on Houston. The Texans favored by 6. The total is at 44.5. This game is a disappoint off, so to speak. As you have Jacksonville, who has just been shit pumped in basically, last week was the worst one. Obviously, last week was the bad one against Buffalo. But it has been incredibly disappointing all season long out in Jacksonville. And that, I think, has made the market kind of turn on them very, very quickly. But Houston, it feels like, is disappointing more. You look at Houston's numbers right now. They are 14th in DVOA, 26th on offense. They are 28th in dropback success rate. A lot of their defensive stats are middle of the road. And I think, honestly, some of those are... there's two sides of it, right? They had a bit of a shootout against the Indianapolis Colts, and then they were able to shut down Chicago, who everybody shuts down. So I do think that, again, -6 is a little aggressive for this, to assume that this Houston team that has had some struggles, honestly, offensively so far this year, to assume that they are going to win a game by a touchdown over Jacksonville right now, again, it just kind of feels a little aggressive, and it feels like a little bit much. So this is one where, again, I am going to stay away. But for the point of this pick per game, as I always do, I'm going to say Jacksonville plus 6. Again, I think they lose, but I think they keep this one relatively close. This line, I can't figure at all. The Rams taking on the Chicago Bears. The Bears are favored by 3, and the total is at 40.5. I get the Rams are going on the road here, but it's still, it's September 27th. It's going to be the 29th by the time, right? Yeah, the 29th by the time this game is happening. It's not going to be -1 billion out in Chicago. It's not going to be this absolutely hindrance of a game that is going to just cause some major problems for the Rams coming from sunny Los Angeles. Also, Matthew Stafford's the quarterback. He played in that division for 100 years. I don't understand this one at all. Now, the Rams, again, they have underwhelmed a little bit, but they have played really hard, at least. 25th in DVOA, 17th on offense, but the defense has been bad at 31st. But the Bears, their DVOA is at 24th, 32nd on offense, 8th on defense. I think, honestly, the play in this one is probably the under, and that's going to be the case for a lot of Chicago games, as their defense is very good, and their offense is very bad, and easy to figure out, we will say. And so I do think that from a Rams perspective, this defense probably figures out Chicago and gives them some issues. And I think Matthew Stafford, with the understanding of the weapons that he has, which are limited, but the combination of Stafford and Sean McVay against this defense, I think is a very, very, very interesting matchup. And so I am actually going to go that this will probably be one that comes up a little bit later on in some of the other content I'm doing today. Take that for what you will. But I am going to say LA Rams plus the 3, and I will go under 40.5 for this game. All NFC North matchup. I guess we continue in the NFC North, as it is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay minus 2.5 in this one, which is a little surprising, but is also quite a bit of respect shown to Minnesota, who right now 4th in DVOA, 1st in defensive DVOA, which was not something I expected, but they're 3rd in defensive EPA per dropback. Defensive EPA per play. So this defense has stepped up big. The offense for Green Bay has not fallen off without Jordan Love. Well, it has, but just picked up in different ways, I suppose. They're 29th in dropback success rate, but they're 5th in dropback EPA. So they are putting up some big plays, just not all the time moving the sticks in the ways that they would like to. Taking a look at Jordan Love and his stats right now, or not stats right now, sorry. Status of Jordan Love, he's close. Game time decision on Sunday. So that does kind of complicate things a little bit. If you are to assume that Jordan Love would be getting the call in this game, I think that Green Bay minus 2.5 still feels like a steal. I understand we are all very excited about what Minnesota is doing so far this year, right? I think, yes, this has been great. Hello, Olyeka. I hope I'm saying that right. Hi. We're all very excited about what Minnesota has been doing. It's been a fun story so far. But the Packers are when healthy, significantly better team. And they are a very, very good, offensive team. Defensively, it has left a little bit to be desired, but they are still 12th in defensive DVOA. And so I do think that they are a squad that can come out and maybe try to limit some stuff here for Minnesota just a little bit. This would be a big win regardless of who's playing quarterback for Minnesota. But this is a real interesting test for this defense. And I think it's also an interesting test to see where the Green Bay defense is at after a couple of weeks in some weirder matchups for their defense, going up against the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans. So I think this is going to be kind of a good measuring stick for both. But I am going to go Green Bay minus 2.5. I just feel like this team is more than a field goal better than Minnesota is right now. Another division matchup in the South, as Atlanta is playing host to New Orleans. You have the Saints, who are 2nd in DVOA, 4th on offense, 5th on defense, against Atlanta, who they have kind of bounced around all over the place. It's fun. And sorry, Oyeka, can you listen to the track Heart Time? I at some point, maybe. There's a video on YouTube. Okay, I will give it a go when I can. But yes, for Atlanta, you have a team that has, I think, on the first game of the year, wildly underwhelmed. And then going into a Sunday nighter against Kansas City, all right, well, they hung the Chiefs, so where do we put them? Same thing now goes for New Orleans. 2 gigantic wins to start the season, but then looked very pedestrian against the Philadelphia Eagles, kind of leading you to the, they've been figured out conversation. And so that is it's a tricky matchup this week. I have said that even with the early season success out in New Orleans, that the New Orleans Saints are a bit of a house of cards, especially offensively. Defensively for Atlanta, I still think there's some room for improvement. I think they've looked pretty good so far, but I think that they brought in some pieces late in camp, and so I think there is still a little bit of meshing that can go on there. I do think that they limit New Orleans one more time. And I think, again, this one probably a little bit lower scoring, so we're going to do another double shot on this one. We are going to go Atlanta minus the 2, and we're going to take under 42 in this game. Philadelphia taking on Tampa Bay. The Eagles favored by 1.5. The total in this one is at 43.5. I get Tampa Bay has had Philadelphia's number the last little bit, and it hasn't looked overly impressive all the time for Philadelphia. And now you have a week off, or a full game, with basically Goddard, Jahan Dotson, and Saquon Barkley as the best options out in Philadelphia offensively. Is a problem. It's a real big concern for this group. And I do worry about them offensively. Defensively for Tampa Bay, they kind of got chewed up by Bo Nix last week, and it was in ways that Jalen Hurts can also hurt them. And so I think that this -1.5 is a little bit too much of an overreaction to some of the concerns we may have about Philadelphia, and also about this matchup that obviously has not gone well for Philadelphia in the past. But I do think that Philadelphia is just a better team than Tampa Bay, and actually by a pretty significant margin. So this is one where I think there's a little bit of overreacting to what's going on out in Philly. The Indianapolis Colts playing host to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, the road favorite at -1.5, with the total sitting at 40. Pittsburgh has been one of the dominant teams so far this year. Defensively, they have balled out. Offensively, they've done enough to have some kind of success. Defensively, they are first in every stat that I look at. Offensively, they are middle in the road of basically everything. I will note, you've probably seen me look down on my phone a couple of times. I have Jaylen Warren in fantasy, and so I have been alerted numerous times now that Jaylen Warren is out of this game. And that is, I don't think it's a major change. Like, I do think he is a talented running back, but I also think that there's going to be a lot of Cordero Patterson involvement now in this offense. That would be a sneaky pickup. A little bit of a if you are desperate play, but you have the Indianapolis Colts who are 24th in defensive rush success rate. So they do give up some chunks in the run game. So I think this could be an interesting spot for Harris, and I think a interesting dart throw type of a move for a Cordero Patterson if you want to go that way. But this one, I think that Justin Fields continues to get better in this offense. And I have talked before about a lack of respect that I have for the Indianapolis Colts defense. And I think that this will be a game where Pittsburgh figures that out a little bit. And then defensively, I think they swallow up Anthony Richardson. So I think that this one goes the way of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have them. I'm buying in to what Pittsburgh is selling me a little bit. So I'm going to go with Pitt -1.5. From a fantasy standpoint, and sorry I've missed the last couple. So if you do have any fantasy questions, let me know. But from a fantasy standpoint, not a whole lot I love in this game. Jonathan Taylor, you kind of have to start him. I would find a way to not start Michael Pittman this week, and for a few weeks going forward. I think he's a very talented wide receiver, but it is not meshing with Anthony Richardson at all right now, and that is a problem for him. So I would try to avoid Anthony Richardson and basically anyone not named Jonathan Taylor in this offense. On the Pittsburgh side, Justin Fields, if you're super desperate. If you are super duper desperate, Cordero Patterson, I think, actually gets a little bit of run in this game, but I think Najee kind of gets bumped up a little bit. I am not going to buy into Calvin Austin with a big play last week, and George Pickens is, I think, very good. So I think you roll with him, and Freiermuth. What, do you have two tight ends? So roll with him if you can. But yes, to Deeds' point, Pitt as a defense fantasy-wise is the only bright spot. All right, I did miss fantasy for a couple of these. Philadelphia taking on Tampa Bay. You're starting your Eagles, Goddard, Saquon, Hurts. I don't... You actually starting Dotson probably wouldn't be the worst thing, depending on the injury situations for Smith and for AJ Brown. I haven't seen a ton of updates on them. If they aren't in the lineup, then I think Jahan Dotson is a sneaky all right play in like 12 teamers and a little bit beyond. For Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving, I think you can start to throw him in your lineup a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. This is not a game to start Baker Mayfield, but the two receivers you are absolutely starting. Atlanta taking on New Orleans. I like this one. There aren't a whole. I would avoid Shaheed. Sorry, stumbled on that. But aside from that, like, you're not sitting Olave, you're not sitting Kamara. I don't think this is a Derek Carr game. And for Atlanta, I think we have seen Mooney is working more and more into this offense. I think you can struggle at. Sorry, I just saw Crimney there. I think you can put Mooney in and feel okay about it. And then like Pitts, Robinson, London, those guys are going to play. And Kirk Cousins, I would avoid it if I could. Again, quickly going back through some of the ones that I missed. Minnesota against Green Bay. Aaron Jones is a start. Justin Jefferson, obviously. Probably not Sam Darnold in this game. I wouldn't. Although there's a couple spots where I kind of have to. And, I mean, Green Bay is 29th in dropback success rate. So I don't know. I would try to avoid that. If Jordan Love is healthy, probably have to put him in anyway. And then I think we are at a point where you can trust the pass catching options out there. Chicago against the Rams, there isn't a bear I would start right now. I get like Cole Kmet is working his way into the offense a little bit more, and tight end sucks, so I would go with that. But I would avoid the running back situation. And for the Rams, like Parkinson and not Stafford, and that's Williams is who the one I was thinking of. I would go with that as well. And then I think we didn't do Jacksonville, Houston either. Jesus, sorry guys, I missed a bunch of these. Jacksonville against Houston. Trevor Lawrence, I think you would try to avoid that, although where he was being drafted, you might have to. Thomas is kind of the only option in this offense I trust right now. Again, you probably have to play ETN based on where he was drafted, but aside from that, I would try to avoid it. And for Houston, I think you have to keep rolling with Stroud, and then with Collins, Dell, and Diggs, I think you have to keep going with those guys. Akers is an interesting play this week, given some of the struggles that Jacksonville has had, specifically in the run D, 25th in defensive EPA per run, and 27th in defensive rush success rate. So I think Akers is actually a pretty good play in this one as well. Denver against the Jets. We kind of talked about fantasy in that one a little bit, so I'll bounce back here now. Crimney is asking, struggling in tight end. Aren't we all? Do I start Conklin or Hunter Henry this week? That is interesting, as I think I would go Conklin there. I think that, again, one of the things I have talked about in the preview for that game is the Denver Broncos taking away Garrett Wilson. And so I think while Lazard benefits from that, I think Conklin will benefit from that as well. And so I think Conklin would be the way to go. But yeah, to Deeds' point, tight end has been a struggle so far this year. For our next game now, New England taking on San Francisco. The 49ers favored by 10.5 points with a 40.5 point total. There isn't a whole lot to this game. I am going to go with San Francisco minus 10.5. I think they are in line for a bounce back spot here against the New England Patriots. And I think Kyle Shanahan wants to take it out on people wearing Patriots jerseys, even though it's no one close to the players who kind of cost him a 28-3 a long time ago. But New England sucks and San Francisco doesn't. So let's go with that. There are some concerning numbers on the defensive side for San Francisco, but I don't think this is one where that gets exploited. And I don't want to talk about this game. I think it sucks. From a fantasy standpoint, I think you can start Brock Purdy and feel okay about it. Mason at running back, you kind of got to. And at wide receiver, I think you have to, it would be weird to have this choice, but I would go Jennings over Ayuk at this point. And I think both of them you can start, especially as it starts to lean toward Kittle being out for this game. On the New England side, Ramondre Stevenson. That's about it. Washington taking on Arizona. This one will have a bit of a different fantasy conversation, as you have... Oh man, need CMC back ASAP. 100% Crimney. I could not agree with you more. I have a couple of fantasy leagues where I am with you on that 100%. Arizona minus 3.5 with the total at 50. Washington, they are 26th in DVOA, 9th on offense, and dead fucking last on defense at 32. Arizona is 11th in DVOA, 8th on offense, 23rd on defense. I think Arizona only being favored by 3.5 points is a little insulting to Arizona. They have legitimately been a good football team this season. And yes, we have concerns about this team on the defensive side. And yes, Washington, just in a standalone game on Monday Night Football, took that spotlight and shone bright with it and put on an excellent offensive performance. I still am not buying it. And I think that the Arizona is just kind of a souped up version of Washington right now, where you have young, exciting, mobile quarterback, can throw it up, do a whole lot of that. Murray's just a better version of that. You have, on both sides, a wide receiver who we really like and can go out and make plays. But right now, Harrison, kind of an up version of McLaurin, which is kind of crazy to say. But just the way that their offenses are going right now. Defensively, neither team can defend very well. But Arizona is playing at least a little bit better defensively. So it just feels like everything on the Washington side, Arizona does it a little bit better. So I will very strongly suggest Arizona minus 3.5 in this game. And I feel really good about that one going forward. Deeds in the chat. The Jennings emergence has been great for me as a Niners fan. Bad for me as an Ayuk owner in our Vampire League. Deeds, we've talked about this. I shed no tears for you in our Vampire League because your team has been absolutely crushing it so far. So I worry not. But and also I have Jennings, so I hope that he has a good one here this week. And that Jordan Love decision needs to come in. So yeah, you with the 50-point game yesterday and leading the league in scoring, you'll be fine. You'll work through it. But yeah, the Jennings being great has been really fun so far. And I kid, I mean, fantasy can be frustrating with all of those things at times. And even though things go well right now, doesn't mean they will in the next one. All right, Cleveland taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Vegas is favored by 1.5, some fucking how, and the total is at 37. Again, both of these teams are dreadful. Cleveland was gifted an opportunity early in their game against the Giants and then did literally nothing until the very end of the game, while the Raiders lost to Carolina. And so I have no idea. I would take the under in this game. That will be my play. I can't imagine picking Cleveland or Vegas in any spot ever. So I will just assume that this game is going to be awful. No Devontae Adams for the Raiders this week, as I was again alerted. So that means there'll be even less points. So from a fantasy standpoint, I think Jerome Ford actually has a pretty good day. I think that Amari Cooper playing his former team might put up a couple of fantasy points. On the Raiders side, Jacoby Myers with no Devontae Adams probably steps up a little bit. And Brock Bowers, we came 3 yards away from hitting that over last week. But I think Brock Bowers continues to factor into this offense. Kansas City taking on the LA Chargers. The Chiefs favored by 7 with a total at 40.5. Kansas City has had 3 squeaker wins so far and now playing their 4th, I was going to say difficult opponent of the season. I think the Chargers are a tough team to play against, but the spread would suggest maybe not an overly challenging marker for Kansas City. Well, the Chargers have been one of the bright spots this year, but offensively, it has not clicked, and now Justin Herbert continues to be banged up. And I think that is the real story here. This will be a very good test for this Chargers defense after, yes, they are, where do we have it here? 3rd in defensive DVOA, 5th in defensive EPA. So they have played well. For those numbers, though, they have played the Panthers, the Raiders, and the Steelers. When Justin Fields is the best quarterback that you've played by a lot, you have not really been tested as a defense. The Kansas City Chiefs will test you as a defense. And so I think that there is going to be... I don't think it's going to be an ass kicking. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, this defense actually isn't shit. Like, I think it's actually quite good. But I do think that they're going to have trouble in this one. And so I do think that this is going to be a Kansas City win. 7 is really high. It's just so high. Like, Kansas City doesn't beat teams by 7 anymore, right? Like, they do not blow out teams at this point in their journey as a football team. Let's look, because they haven't won... Did they win by 7 in any of the games this year? All right, we're gonna take a look here. We're gonna go through Kansas City schedules and see when how all this kind of has played out, because they aren't a team that blows anyone out right now, right? So you look at it so far this year, as he quickly scrolls through Wikipedia. They went 0-3 in the preseason. I'm sure they're devastated. Yeah, so a 7-point win against Baltimore. That was close to being a 1 point, but that is a 7-point win. So you have that. Then a 1 point win against the Bengals, 5-point win against the Atlanta Falcons. Let's go to last year. They finished 11-6, blibbity blobbity blue. They beat the Chargers, or the Bengals, sorry, by 8. On New Year's Eve, and the Patriots by 10. They actually had a few more 7-point wins last year than I anticipated. So maybe I am just kind of being a little bit too cautious with this number. They don't blow teams out anymore, but I can't pick the Chargers in this game. Going against Mahomes is never fun. So I'm going to go Kansas City -7 and just kind of watch through my fingers like that. Buffalo taking on Baltimore. I see the NHL note deeds. I'll talk about it at the end here. We're just going to wrap up the football here first. Buffalo against Baltimore. This game's going to be fun as hell. I will legitimately be waiting all day for Sunday night for this one. I think this game is going to be a blast. You have Baltimore favored by 2.5 points. The total is at 46.5. I am very surprised by Baltimore being favored in this spot. Buffalo has been the best team in the NFL this year. I don't have them number 1 in my power rankings because Kansas City, they're the defending champs. They're Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they're 3-0. So what am I doing to knock them off? But no team has come close to playing as good this year as Buffalo has. And certainly not Baltimore, who had 4 very good quarters against Kansas City, 3 against the Raiders, and 3 against Dallas, that they have not been able to put these games together. And so to suggest that they are a favorite against Buffalo, even on the road at night and all of those things, I can't get there. I think Buffalo exposes a few holes on this team defensively. I think Buffalo's defense probably gets exposed a little bit in this game, quite frankly. And so I think the over is in play for this particular matchup. But yeah, give me Buffalo. And you know what? I'm not even going to cheap out and take the points. I'm just going to go full on Buffalo money line. And we will do a look also at over 46.5. Thy joke's on you, with the amazing name, and also the question. Full PPR, drop Zamir White for Rashawn Johnson. God damn. Drop Zamir White for sure. And yeah, if Rashawn Johnson's the one who is out there, who's the apple of your eye, by all means. I think PPR, there is an upgrade there. And I think slowly Chicago's going to realize DeAndre Swift ain't it. And that is going to be a little bit more on the Rashawn Johnson side of things. I still think Khalil Herbert factors into this offense somewhere, although they don't seem to agree. So at some point, I'm going to have to give up on that dream. But yeah, you want to do that, by all means. That is more a statement on where Zamir White has been, and honestly a statement on where DeAndre Swift has been. So yeah, that is perfectly logical with that. I also, again, have kind of skimmed through a couple fantasy ones, although really, like, Washington, you're starting basically everyone in that game because it's going to be awesome. Cleveland Raiders, we kind of went over it a little bit. The Chiefs, I think you can start your guys. So, yeah. And Chargers, start the running backs, and that's it. Buffalo against Baltimore, we made the pick. Buffalo, I think you can, we're starting to see you can trust the receivers more and more and more. Obviously, we're never sitting Josh Allen, and James Cook is a must play. And I think Kincaid works his way into this offense a little bit more. Baltimore has had some tight end issues so far this year. And for Baltimore, Lamar, Henry, obviously, and Flowers and Andrews. Even though Andrews, it's been frustrating. You have to start Andrews. 16-team league, so not a whole lot left for thy jokes on you with the Zamir White for Rashawn Johnson. Then yeah, no, that one, you are safe to do that. There is, as a Raider fan, I can tell you there's going to be no point this year where you're going to be like, oh man, I can't believe I dropped that guy. Yeah, no, it's bad. Monday Night Football, Tennessee taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins favored by 1.5 with the total at 36.5, which, holy shit. This is going to be a bad football game with two bad quarterbacks. And so you would then suggest that the weapons around Skylar Thompson, a little bit better than the ones around Will Levis, but Will Levis is better than Skylar Thompson. This game is going to be awful, and I can't wait for Seattle and Detroit to start, so I cannot watch this game more. But I think I just can't go with Miami. Like, it looks so bad with Skylar or with Tim Boyle or whoever's a quarterback. It looks so bad. And I still am holding on to the slightest bit of hope that it is better in Tennessee than I think it's going to be. And so I'm going to say that it's the Titans covering that. So we will go Tennessee plus 1.5 in that spot. I'm not going to get as greedy and just go money line on that one. But yeah, we'll go plus 1.5 in that spot. In fantasy, Jesus Christ. You don't love it for almost anybody. Like, you have to start your Dolphins because of where you drafted them, right? But I do think that from a Tennessee standpoint, Pollard is a play, and kind of that's it. That, like, yeah, that's kind of it. In-depth analysis you came here for. All right, Seattle taking on Detroit. The Lions favored by 3.5 points at the total at 45.5. Again, this is one, I think it's disrespectful to Seattle. I think the Seahawks have played better than Detroit has this year. I think that Detroit has really not been able to put it together so far offensively. They have a new weapon in Jameson Williams who seems legitimate, and it is fucking Jared Goff up. Because before, he could just look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, throw him the football, everything was fine. Now, he has to make these pesky things called decisions, and it is absolutely messing with him. And so this offense has not been able to get into a rhythm so far. And like, they are middle of the pack passing wise, and they have been crushing it in the run. 52% of their runs have been graded successful, and they are 7th in the league in EPA per rush. So, yeah, they are running the ball with great effect. Going up against the Seattle team that I think has been really good. They are 2nd in the league in defensive DVOA, 3rd in DVOA overall. I think that this is a very good football team, and I think the Monday Night Spotlight, we're going to come out of this one with everybody saying that Seattle is the team is a legitimate team to watch out for in the NFC. So I will take Seattle plus 3.5 going with a road dog to wrap things up on for our NFL preview here today. All right, Bailey has kind of recognized that the NFL preview part is back. Also, she's telling me like, hey, Deeds messaged you about Zayne Parehk a while ago. Can you she's also falling off a table. Well, we got to talk about that. So yes, let's talk about Zayne Parehk here and him being assigned to the Ontario Hockey League from the Calgary Flames. Just honestly, for strictly for my own purposes, I'm going to play the Calgary Flames talk thing now. Wasn't necessarily anticipating talking Flames today, but there's been a couple of things that have happened at camp, and so want to just briefly talk about them. One, Deeds is saying, and I have no reason to believe that he's lying to me, although I should definitely just, verify this. And while I trust Deeds immensely, this is also the same chat where someone was trying to get me to watch a YouTube video, so, is what it is. But let's just go here, my notification, go down. The Calgary Flames have assigned defenseman Zayne Parehk to the Saginaw Spirit. This is the move to make. I know. He is this new shiny toy that everyone is very excited about. And that's super duper, and it's great, and it's fun, and it's all of those things. But he is not ready yet. That doesn't mean he's not going to be. This is no knock on him at all. This is him being an 18-year-old defenseman in the National Hockey League. That's very difficult to do. And so this isn't an indictment on anything at all. This is the natural progression of things. You have a number of young defensemen ahead of him who have looked better than him. He has such clear and obvious gifts as a player, as a defenseman, all of these things. But he also has some very clear and obvious things he needs to work on. And it just so happens that working on those things in the Ontario Hockey League is kind of the perfect spot for him. He needs to fill out a little bit more, and he needs to address his defensive game. So, do those things. I think he will do that very effectively, and I think that he will be great one day. I think that he is a very smart kid. I think that the defensive limitations that he has, he will figure out. I just don't think he needs to figure him out at the NHL level. The OHL is still a good developmental league, and if he had come out and was just undeniable, then maybe. But he's been good, but he hasn't been so good that you have to give him a look as one of the top 6 defensemen on this team. It is not the case. So let him go to the Ontario Hockey League, let him develop, let him go kick the shit out of everyone at the World Juniors and do all of those things and just be awesome in that way. But you do not need him to go out and do that. I think Flames fans wanted to see more of him. I guess maybe, like, you could have extended him in preseason maybe a little bit more, but also, like, the Saginaw season's starting, right? Like, the WHL season, sorry, my cat's being very cute. The WHL season starts, like, tomorrow, doesn't it? So I am assuming that Saginaw season starts right away, so why... Just so that we could see him a couple times in preseason games when you're not going to be starting him anyway, let Brustevich get a few more reps. Let Poirier get a few more reps. Let some of these defensemen who you're actually going to play on the NHL roster this year, figure out who they play well with. You use training camp for what it's actually used for, in figuring out where guys fit and trying to earn some jobs, instead of, well, we want to see this guy because he's the fun, shiny new toy. I just, like, again, like, preseason is what it is. Like, it's not that, like, I'm not saying that you need to, how could you possibly defile the sanctity of preseason games by playing a kid in extra games? Like, I'm not saying that. It's the preseason. We all understand this. But you have other things that you need to work on and figure out specifically on this blue line. And so to have him taking up spots that he's not going to fill in the regular season anyway, you may as well just let him go to the Ontario Hockey League right when the season starts and get into it and just keep doing that. So I think that is certainly, again, it would be fun, it would be great, but we don't need it. Also noted today that Nazem Kadri collided knee on knee, I think, with Blake Coleman. At least that was the last thing that I saw. So that's awesome and really great. But hopefully everything is okay on that one, because that would be That would be not great to have any kind of injury issue to some of the veterans who you kind of want around this team. Crimney, yes, we do NFL previews every Friday. Yes, it is, as Deeds is saying, it's a Fights in Football Friday, or Football and Fights Friday. So that's what I do. Run through the entire NFL, and for the next couple of months, also run through the entire CFL, as you will know in a moment. And then whatever's going on in combat sports. We'll have some boxing talk and a little bit of pro wrestling as this show goes along. But yes, speaking of the football, it is time to get back to that and go into now some CFL picks for Week 17. Again, for a full list of my NFL picks, for my CFL picks, 3 Down Nation. We have the best bets piece that is up. For those of you who are hanging out live right now, going to throw that in the chat. So those are the best bets for the CFL week this week. So not going to go like point spread wise or anything like that. And again, trying to limit the old gambling talk on the old Twitch. But for podcast listeners, there will be a today's tick at the end for an exclusive one there. But let's run through. Tonight, it is Winnipeg taking on Edmonton. This game is back in Winnipeg after it was the Bombers beating the Elks in Edmonton last week. And I struggle to see how Edmonton is going to fare better in Winnipeg. It doesn't get easier to play in Winnipeg as the season goes on. So I think that there is a real confidence that Winnipeg is going to be able to do this thing. And then looking at this, you knew Winnipeg was on fire, right? Figuratively. You knew that the Bombers were playing some very good football right now, or at least winning some very important games. But they put up a graphic the other day. Was it them or was it the CFL? I think I went to the wrong spot. But they have, on this 6-game winning streak that they're on right now, one of the wins was against Hamilton, which doesn't mean shit. But they have 2 wins against BC, 2 wins against Saskatchewan, and if they win today, it'll be 2 wins against Edmonton in a 7-game winning streak. So not only are they winning games, but they are winning season series and just putting, every team that is even considering being in a playoff spot right now in the West, they are running through and winning with relative ease. They had to battle against Saskatchewan in both of those games. But still, they are winning those games very impactfully. And so to be able to sweep the team that's in second place, sweep the team that's in third place, and potentially sweep the team that's in fourth place, quite impressive in a 7-game win streak. And Winnipeg, I don't know what is holding me back from fully giving them their flowers this year, but I am on the Bombers this week. BC taking on Hamilton. One thing that's really intriguing about this game is that both defenses have actually started to play pretty well. I did a mini deep dive in that article that I posted there from 3 Down about how well BC's defense has played since Matthew Betts has come back. They would be, by points, they would be, I think, the second or third best defense in the league if that point total over the last little bit played out. And passing-wise, the most passing yards they've allowed in a game is 268 in the last 3 games. They are playing very, very well defensively. And so I think that they're going to be able to somewhat limit a pretty high-powered offense out in Hamilton right now. And now on the other side, the Ticats defense is playing pretty well. They bottled up Chad Kelly again last week and gave up 30 points, but still only allowed, it was at least under 300 passing yards in that game. So I think certainly something to look for is how well these two teams play defensively in this spot, even though both offenses certainly have a lot of players that you would want to highlight. Ottawa taking on Saskatchewan. Like I said, there's a breakdown on for 3 Down Nation. Also, you can see behind me the Ryder jersey and the Ryder Rey Mysterio mask. Shout out, no copyright laws in Mexico. But I taped the Ryder Happy Hour podcast. Came out yesterday, so there's a little bit more in-depth on that game. But I do think that right now, Ottawa is struggling both offensively and defensively. Offensively, they're struggling to put up points. It's 21 or under in 3 of their last 4, and 12 points in 2 of their last 4. And defensively, basically every starting linebacker for that team is hurt, and they are giving up a whole lot of rushing yards to teams that when teams run the ball. Montreal just doesn't. And so I think when you look at the Armstead factor in all of this, when you look at the struggles that Ottawa is having in protecting the football and all of that, I think that there is a really good job, or a real good opportunity here for Saskatchewan to make it 2 wins in a row. Who would have thought? And lastly, Montreal against Toronto. Very interesting matchup because Montreal, I said like, oh, they're back on track. And then you watch that game, it's like, well, are they? Like defensively, they played great. But offensively, it's not clicking in the way that it was before. And like no Philpott is going to do that. But I think as Fajardo kind of, again, reacclimates himself to this offense after getting hurt and figures out like, okay, I can do this with Rambo, I can do this with Reggie White Jr., I can do this with Janarian Grant. I can kind of bounce these guys around and do it all kind of this way. I think that's going to get a little bit better. And Toronto, defensively, they've kind of been gashed up quite a bit lately. And so I think they have some issues. They do defend the run pretty well, but I have it in my thing. Montreal doesn't run at all. Like Walter Fletcher has fewer carries than AJ Ouellette, and AJ Ouellette has played once since Joe Biden stepped down. He's barely played at all. The two are not correlated. I would... Just from what I believe, I think AJ Ouellette might feel the opposite about it. You know what I mean? Anyway, this is not a team that runs the ball a lot. And so Toronto's one strength, Montreal kind of goes away from. So I do think Montreal gets the road win. Also, they're undefeated on the road. So there is your CFL talk for the week as everyone scampers away from the channel for a little bit. But let's bring it all back now as we get into the fights portion of the Fights in Football Friday. It is time to look. After a mega weekend in boxing, there are some mega fights to make. Let's look at them in the boxing talk. All right, the boxing world was shooketh with Daniel Dubois picking up a knockout win over Anthony Joshua last weekend out in front of 98,000 people at Wembley Stadium. Eat it, AEW. But now you have, I think, a new star born in the heavyweight division. And while others were surprised by this monster upset, we were not here calling it Dubois and Dubois by knockout to help us have a profitable weekend around these parts. But now it is time to figure out what's next. And for Dubois, the answer is very simple. It is the winner of Usyk against Fury. There is but no other fight to make coming out of this. Save me the automatic rematch bullshit. I don't know where my cat went. Anyway, sorry. Save me the automatic rematch bullshit. Save me anything else. It has to be Dubois fighting, whether it's Usyk, whether it's Fury, for the undisputed heavyweight championship in Q1 next year. There's nothing else. I don't want to see another Dubois Joshua. Let this kid have this big moment. There was nothing like, oh, well, Joshua just didn't, whatever. No, the reason he didn't is because he got absolutely brained in the first round by Dubois and then just fought like an idiot the rest of the time. You can't, oh, well, I didn't take the guy seriously enough, so let me have a takesy backsies. Doesn't work like that. If you wanted a shot at the heavyweight championship, you shouldn't have taken someone fighting in a heavyweight championship fight lightly for the fucking third time in your career. So, no automatic rematch. Give this kid a undisputed title shot against Usyk or Fury. For Joshua, again, there's only one fight in my mind. It's Deontay Wilder. And I get Wilder has lost 4 of his last 5. 2 of those are to Fury. One of them is against Zhang, who I think we kind of underestimate a little bit. But these two have danced around each other. And for them to not fight would be a great miss. And it is already a significant miss, right? Like, we are getting this way too late if we are doing this. But I do it anyway, right? We got Mayweather-Pacquiao too late. And the fight wasn't awesome. But we still got it. Like, at least give us this, like, these two guys who have been part of a renaissance in the heavyweight division and defined an era in heavyweight boxing. You tell me you can't sell that? Like, come on. This is the fight to make. So let's get it done finally. On the other side, you had Jaime Munguia with a big win over the weekend as well. Up next for him, I have him against Christian Mbilia Asomo. I think it's very obvious. I'm not overly familiar with the name, but Christian's coming off of a win over Derevyanchenko. He is 28-0. Ring Magazine has him as the number 1 contender at 168 pounds. They have Munguia at 2. So it seems like this one checks out, right? Makes sense. The one guy is one spot ahead. May as well do it. I don't think it's the big fight that Munguia was maybe looking for, coming off of a win on ESPN. While I was very impressed with Munguia, that this is not a shot at him at all. It wasn't the most dominating win. It showed a level of maturity, and it showed a well-rounded fight game for Munguia. But it didn't. It wasn't like, okay, well, get this guy. Like, where's Terrence Crawford? Let's get him right now. It wasn't that. If Terrence Crawford wants a taste at 168, sure, let's do that. But I think you have to give him kind of a bit more of a legitimate fight before we get back into the name brand territory of this whole thing. All right, this show has gone long, so apologies for that. Thanks for sticking around through all of this one today. Let's get into now some pro wrestling talk, as both WWE and AEW put on some shows that were really fun this week. All right, WWE Raw. Let's get into it. Big moment at the end. But just a couple of other notes. We're not going to go like beat by beat for this whole thing. I have loved this last part of the CM Punk Drew McIntyre build. I get some people didn't like the bracelet stuff. I thought, for as cheesy as it was, they played it up very well, and I think both characters act believably around it, and so that has really, I think, done a good job of getting us to this point. And now that they are at this point, they are hitting it out of the park. They have, I think, conveyed the seriousness and shown proper hesitancy while also being confident and kind of feeling like they have to do this. Both guys have said, my families don't want me to do this. CM Punk was like, I probably don't even have another Hell in the Cell match in me. Drew McIntyre saying, like, I've had back injuries. He didn't say that directly, but I have had injuries there that have never been fixed, which apparently is true. So they have done a good job of really driving home how serious this is, how this makes no sense for them, but they have to do it because that guy is standing over there, and this is the only way that we can end this thing, is by me beating him, or by me figuring out that I can't beat him in this thing. But this is the only place for this to end, even though it is not where I want to be. And I think that this has really gotten over the seriousness of the structure in a very incredible way. And I have loved it. I love that it feels a little bit more organic, even though we all kind of figured Bad Blood, this, Hell in a Cell was born at Bad Blood. And this is also just kind of the time when Hell in a Cell was happening anyway. But because it's not called Hell in a Cell, it doesn't feel as forced. And it feels more legitimate, and it feels very serious. And it feels like, oh, this is the only way that this could, finish, is by Hell in a Cell, and it's not just, this popped up. Braun Strowman against Bronson Reed. This might be the feud of the year. These guys have been unbelievable in just wild, chaotic, car crash, literally and figuratively, television all throughout this feud. It's been amazing. And now last monster standing. I would imagine we get the ring exploding on Monday. That's a whole lot of fun. But it has been some good old-fashioned fun in the WWE. And then how can you not be happy for Jey Uso? Him getting the Intercontinental Championship, that reaction, massive. You want to talk about like getting over and being made. Monday night, that was it. He was 100% that in this. It was a phenomenal performance. And the crowd fully into it. I like the match itself. It was fun. It was good. It was surprising to have him take the belt off of Braun Breaker. I kind of thought Braun was settling in for a really long title run, but I also don't think that this knocks Braun Breaker down any, right? Like I think that he is now kind of established as a real like ass kicker type of a guy, and I think they have done a good job of legitimizing him. And there's going to be a rematch here, but I do think also, if now Jey kind of gets caught up in this swirling storm heading towards Vancouver of War Games and the Roman Reigns stuff, I think this also kind of ties in to what Cody was talking about when they did the thing at where Georgia Tech plays football, where Cody was like, hey, there's a tribal chief, it's not you. There's a WWE champion, it's not you. And now you can also say like, hey, Jey is main event Jey Uso without you. And he won his first singles title without you. And so there's all of these things that I think you can get kind of excited about and build this up in that type of a storyline, and I think make it very impactful. And so I think it fits into that one as well. But overall, the Intercontinental title picture is so fun. I have really liked how they've done it on Raw. I've said before, like, one of my main issues for the last little bit was, like, everything built up to WrestleMania perfectly, but it felt like everything had to finish at WrestleMania, right? And I get that it's the new season out of WrestleMania, and so it's the season finale. But it was just like, oh, well, we can't. Gunther can only lose the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. Well, Roman Reigns, like, he can only lose the belt at WrestleMania. Cody can only win the belt at WrestleMania. Sammy can only win the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. What, are you going to take him off of it somewhere else? No, not a chance. Can't do that. Like, all these different things, there was but one place that it could happen, and that was WrestleMania. And so I like that they've kind of gotten away from that formula now. Have it be on a random Raw on a Monday night in wherever the fuck they were, Ontario, California. Have the... Like, I don't think you need to have world title changes, but at Bad Blood, maybe we get a women's title change. Like, it doesn't all have to be just WrestleMania or just SummerSlam for title changes to happen. And so I hope this is a bit more of a sign of things to come. Like, you still have to have special things for those big shows, but it doesn't all just have to be, well, this guy got beat for the first time, this guy got beat for the first time, this guy lost the title, this guy lost the title, this guy lost the title. Every big moment just happened at WrestleMania, and the rest of the year you don't really have to pay attention to. I think they've done a good job right that. But like I said, overall, the IC title picture is really strong right now. And building off of that tree from WrestleMania, like we talked about, Gunther reestablishes the prestige of the Intercontinental Championship. And from that, Sami Zayn, who maybe they dropped the ball on, his post-WrestleMania win with Kevin Owens against the Usos at WrestleMania 39 was not the strongest, but they rehabilitated him and got him back into a upper mid-card toward the main event status with that Intercontinental Championship win. From there, Gunther spins off to the title picture, and he's been excellent. And now is the champion. The Sami Zayn part of this, I guess, Intercontinental title tree, Sami Zayn goes off and feuds with Chad Gable, legitimizing Chad Gable with a couple of amazing matches and a really good heel turn against Sami Zayn out in Montreal. From there, Sami and Jey Uso kind of, build that relationship back up, while Chad Gable elevates now the awfully named American Maid or whatever it is. But now he's in a feud with the Wyatt Six, and that feels like a bigger thing. So we've now elevated a couple of things, and then Sami Zayn goes into a feud with Braun Breaker, and because still the Intercontinental title feels important, Braun Breaker winning it eventually feels important. And so he gets elevated in this whole thing. And now you have Jay. But also, Braun Breaker, that Fatal 4-Way here in Calgary, where Braun is going around and talking shit to every person in that Fatal 4-Way, made him feel like the asshole bully jock in high school, but also gave him a bit of a swagger and a bit of an air to him that was really, really great. And I think, again, elevates him, and it made everyone else in that feel like, okay, there is something going on with him and this guy, and that's what this is going to be. So they have done a great job of going from the Gunther run to now building up a number of these guys to the point where Sami Zayn eventually is going to get a title shot and is going to legitimately feel like he could potentially be a threat for that title. So I think they've done some really great work over there on Monday Night Raw. SmackDown's been a little blah lately, for sure. Now let's get to AEW. It was Grand Slam. First, we have Bryan Danielson against Nigel McGuinness. It was fun. It wasn't one of the epics that they've had before in Ring of Honor, but to expect that would be insane. But it was cool to see them in there again, doing their thing on a big stage that was quite frankly worthy of their talents, more so than Ring of Honor was at that time. But I'm interested to see what they do with Nigel now. Is he an every now and then character? I think that is something that AEW would benefit from. I know that when AEW was starting, WWE was getting shit on a lot for part-time performers, and specifically part-time performers in major roles, right? Like, Brock Lesnar's the champion, and he's defending it 4 times a year, which I was okay with if that meant it elevated the Intercontinental Championship, and it didn't. But now, like, I feel like AEW has kind of abused it the other way, where Jericho's an every week performer. Well, he doesn't feel special. Adam Copeland was an every week performer. Well, he didn't feel special. And then he broke his leg. Like, you have all of these different things that, like, Mercedes Moné, every week we're seeing her, doesn't feel special. There's nothing that feels overly different and overly special right now in AEW. And I think if you were to have a Nigel McGuinness who would come back 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, that would be fun and make him feel important. And quite frankly, kind of make him, treat him like a legend when he comes out, which he is, I think, deserving of that status, given his work in the wrestling world. I thought it was a cool moment retiring the FTW championship. Neat. It was a neat thing for Hook, but it's absolutely run its course. And so to retire it in New York with Taz there on commentary, it's just perfect. I'm interested to see where Hook goes from here. I do think, obviously, the cold-hearted, handsome devil that he is, there's a look to him that is great. There is a style that is really interesting, but there is a lot that needs to be kind of rounded out in his game. And I think they would tell you that. And I think he just needs in-ring time. And so he would benefit from a house show schedule or from being able to work on other promotions and just get those reps and get that repetition instead of just doing it every week on AEW. And this is where the relationship with Ring of Honor is a little bit frustrating, where ROH is just a TV taping at the beginning of the thing. If ROH was its own separate touring brand, you could do a full set of TV tapings with Hook, with them, and build that up instead of, well, we can't have him on ROH because then he's wrestling 2 times in the night, and that doesn't help anyone. Like, have him go out and do, like, a month and a half's worth of TV tapings with them and just get more of that in-ring experience. He just needs more reps right now, is basically what he needs. Tag team match was a blast. It's great seeing Kyle Fletcher kind of get bumped up in these matches a little bit and get taken a little bit more seriously in these opportunities. It feels like he is kind of the next strong prospect. The one thing I didn't like is that this is starting to feel predictable when it comes to the Callis family. You have a match, it's highly competitive, it's really fun. Don Callis gets involved, he gives him the screwdriver, and then there is this inner conflict of do I or don't I? And I guess there wasn't a whole lot of that. It looked like Fletcher was just going to just stab motherfucker with it. But you have Ospreay come out and stop him from doing that, and all is right in the world. But then they lose the match off of it. And that happens a lot in these big Callis family matches. Like, it becomes a little bit repetitive. And it was just a little bit like, oh my God, we get it. Because there's been so much of that in Ring of Honor right now. Oh, I don't want to hit him with the Tiger Driver or whatever. Oh, I don't want to hit her with this kendo stick. Oh, I don't want to hit this guy with a screwdriver. Like, there is so much inner conflict going on. Oh, don't go to the dark side. How could you? It gets a little bit repetitive. But I do think that we are going to see a Kyle Fletcher turn, and he's going to go fully to the dark side. And I would assume Mark Davis gets back soon, and we get a full-on Aussie Open type of a thing. And maybe even there's a mutual respect with Ricochet and Ospreay, and they team up to face Aussie Open going forward. Because that's kind of where I see that kind of going, and then them kind of branching off from there. MVP in AEW is interesting, that it's kind of a back and forth with Swerve, that there is some talk about who might be coming with MVP. I think there are some interesting notes. Yeah, I think it'd be fun. Mariah May, Mina Shirakawa, Willow Nightingale, that could be interesting. I am a big Mina Shirakawa fan. I'm a big Willow Nightingale fan, and Mariah May is certainly something. But we need to get the celebration thing over with. Like, no one is taking a championship match seriously before she is able to do this title celebration thing. And so, like, I think we need to put the old stuff to bed before we're doing this new thing. And so I hope that kind of gets figured out. And then Mox against Darby Allin was great. I've said before, but Darby Allin feels like a star. Like, he is a little undersized for sure, but his style, his recklessness, the fans love him. The whole presentation makes him feel a little bit more legitimate. And then him landing on the hardwood, look, painful as fuck. And then, like, Mox has this reaction to "you can't kill him." That was just perfect. And then he does eventually end up getting the win. I love this BCC with Mox. It feels like a Batman type of a villain, where it just feels like everyone at any time is in danger of just an extreme level of violence. He carries himself perfectly. So does everyone else in this crew. Like, everything fits this so perfectly. They do such a good job with it. It is the seriousness that you want out of these type of characters. Danielson coming out and choking over the tie is amazing. Private Party coming out after was a bit of a fart in church, so to speak. Just a bit of a, oh, okay. That's it? All right. But I do, like, that match is going to be an ass kicking. And I think now Mox being the number one contender makes for an interesting night for Wrestle Dream. How they got there was weird. I did not like how we did this roundabout way to get Jon Moxley in this with Darby Allin having already earned the shot. We're getting into wins don't matter and stakes don't matter. When this guy won a championship opportunity at All In. Actually, it's gonna be at All Out, so just don't worry about that. Even though I know he got on the mic and said he's gonna finally have his All In moment. It was just in a different thing, and just forget about that. And now Darby Allin, yeah, he wins this thing so that he can be the number one contender for Grand Slam. But he's going to put it on the line against Jon Moxley because the champion's not going to wrestle. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Just kidding, the champion's going to wrestle. Huh? So the booking was weird, but we get to a very interesting spot now where you have Daniel Bryan against Jon Moxley at Wrestle Dream, and the stakes attached to Bryan Danielson certainly didn't make for a more dramatic night against Jack Perry. But it does against Moxley, because you can very easily talk yourself into Bryan's last match being in his home state against a guy who he has a tie with in the company. And from a storyline standpoint, for Mox to retire him after how the BCC started with them being rivals and all of that, I think like storyline wise, it works. He's had the match with Nigel, so you kind of cut that. Like there isn't the he has so many more whatever. So it's like, well, like there's a couple other ones he could have, and he's not again retiring full time. Or all the time. He's just retiring from being a full time guy. So there's still a couple dream matchy things you can do, but I do think you can kind of like, okay, this is a legitimate opportunity that he could lose. But you're right, Deeds. The ADD of the booking staff is very frustrating. It is like, it just kind of feels like, all right, this is the way we're going, and we have this idea. Ooh, but wait, what if we did this? And then you kind of like try to, they equal parts over-explain and under-explain, and just nothing really clicks. And so I don't want to go too negative on AEW, because this show was fantastic. And there's been a lot of very fun stuff in AEW lately, and I think they have tightened some of it up. But it is still, like you said, it is all over the place with all of these things. And then another part of it that I didn't love was, like, Christian, he has their version of Money in the Bank now. And so he has to physically sign the contract to go out and cash it in on Bryan Danielson. And it was thwarted by Kip Sabian stealing his pen. Like, what? And you even contract, like, just so in case you didn't have it just beat over your head that this is so much less serious than all the other stuff that's going on, you had them run by Claudio and Pac, and it's just like, oh shit. And you just, like, you see the guys who are supposed to be serious there, and then this goofball of a thing in your world title picture was annoying. But I do think a lot of that Deeds is getting tightened up, but it's not perfect in the way that it needs to. Okay, that's going to do it for the stream today and for the show. Thank you to Deeds hanging out in the chat here for as long as you did. This was a long show today again. So thank you very much for hanging out. Next Monday is a holiday here in Canada. So Monday we are going to be off, and then back to the regularly scheduled programming on Tuesday. Thank you. If you missed anything, it's available in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Just search Couch Potato Diary on there. This has been fun. Deeds, glad you think it's a great show. I will talk to all you guys on Tuesday. I'm out. Have a good one, everybody.